YouTube, what the crap are you even doing? What are you thinking? Okay, I thought we were past this. I was getting videos demonetized that were the most innocent you could possibly imagine. Oh, before I start my rant, let me ensure camera should be plugged in, otherwise it's going to go dark in the middle of the stream and that will be distracting. So way back in 2017, I recall uploading several videos that got demonetized before they were even processed, which means YouTube didn't even have a way of viewing the video, and they would just instantly demonetize them. And that was very, very frustrating back in 2017 because I was uploading like iPhone 10 leaks or iPhone 10 review. That's what every other video was back then. And it was... I very intentionally am a content creator that tries. I mean, sometimes we go a bit more on the edgy side, but for the most part, we don't curse. We don't make that many dirty jokes. If we do, we try to be subtle about them because we're mainly trying to make it approachable for family-friendly content, essentially. Not that you're going to watch these tech videos with your family, but even before the demonetization thing, I just did my best not to curse or do anything that would make content family-friendly. So they raised the guideline of what a monetized channel requires. So for a while, you know, pretty much anybody could become monetized, and then the advertisers started pulling out, so then they start doing these, demonetizations across everybody, and there were a bunch of channels getting demonetized that weren't doing anything wrong, and then everybody was obviously very, very upset, so YouTube changed the guidelines of what you have to do to get monetized, and that's when they required the 4,000 hours of watch time, and that's when they required 1,000 subscribers, and then you have to submit a review. You don't instantly get monetized. Even if you hit those guidelines, you have to be manually reviewed to make sure you're following community guidelines and that kind of thing. Then they will monetize you, and that kind of turned off the auto demonetization problems people were having. And since then, it hasn't really been too big of an issue, and now it seems to have bounced back, which I was very annoyed by because, you know, I have been fairly careful, and I don't think I have broken any community guidelines. But as of this morning, YouTube has decided to demonetize my Intel rant video, which I don't understand how. It says it's a manual review, even though the whole thing is basically complaining about a commercial being cringy and untruthful. It says, findings from human review. They found your video is suitable for limited ads because of controversial issues, topics that may be unsettling for our users. You can't make this stuff up. This is unsettling to them that we made a video about Intel being salty. I said my selection was none, but YouTube's selection was content which focuses on graphic or detailed descriptions of controversial issues such as suicide, sexual abuse, child abuse, or domestic abuse. What the heck? How does that even remotely relate to anything we talked about? In fact, if you guys recall in that video, I was pretty defensive and gave credit to Justin Long. And I even gave Intel some credit for not turning off dislikes in the comment section, which they very easily could have. You know, they could have pulled the David Dobrik attempt and been like, let's talk, but then turn off comments and likes and dislikes. Let's not get into that, though. You know what I mean? So this is what they've listed the Intel video as, despite it mainly being about how a brand is salty that another brand has created a better product, and therefore they are running hate ads. So they demonetized this. I don't know if they were trying to go the route, maybe, because I've heard some guidelines talk about bullying, like saying you can't bully someone or you can't say hateful things about someone, but I legit said in the video, if you guys can recall, I said, like, Justin Long, no hate towards him. He's just trying to make a living. I don't think he really cares that much about Intel versus Apple Silicon. I don't really think he cares that much about Android versus iOS. He's going to do what he needs to do to get paid, which I think is hardly bullying. I would hardly call that a discredit. Is mainly, I guess, what concerns me is when companies decide to demonetize you based upon an opinion, and they decide that, oh, you're not liking Intel, that's not acceptable. I'm really hoping this is just essentially a mistake, and they thought that there was something bad with this video, and the human reviewer misclicked it and thought he was approved of it, but I'd really love to understand why this even showed up in their system, considering how much content I upload on a regular basis and how much of that content is perfectly fine. And I feel like if something gets flagged in their system and they recognize that you're a channel that's been around for many, many years, that's been making, full-time living off of the videos for several years, and they've never had any bullying, they've never had any graphic content, they've never covered controversial subjects, you would think if a channel had been doing that for years, they would be a little bit more careful to demonetize. Which is why it concerns me that it says this was done manually, not like this wasn't a, what's it called, auto detection thing. At least it claims it's not. Something tells me it is. So I guess I'll send YouTube some feedback and say no part of my video was in any way relating to controversial issues or showed any type of abuse. So yeah, I drag using yellow. Okay, I'm doing the screenshot. I'm filling it out now. Send. So I'm just gonna hope someone sees that and recognizes, like, they should keep. You know how Apple Track keeps a score on leakers? I feel like YouTube internally should keep a score on how often channels run into issues. And if there's one mishap within a series of literally over 1,000 videos, then they should probably think twice about demonetizing. It's very annoying. They'll just respond with a strike, won't they? Knowing YouTube, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. They're just going to see that. They'll be like, oh, you think this isn't controversial? When I think controversial subjects, I usually imagine like politics or the pandemic, or talking about, deeper subjects like that. Sorry, Starlink's looking for a satellite. Give it a moment. They will respond with a strike. It's very stupid. I agree. Yeah, it's buffering. One sec. Should be back now. Have any of your previous rant videos been demonetized, or is this a first? Not in a long, long time. So way back in 2017, they used to demonetize a lot of my stuff. But I could it was automatically done. It wasn't manually done. Pretty much it would just be like, we detected that this video is not suitable. I don't know how they detected it. Oftentimes, like I said, my iPhone 10 review got demonetized before it was done uploading. As in, like, it was in the 70%, 80%. Like, the video was not even on their servers, and then they demonetized it. I don't know if it's just because the letter X was in the thumbnail or the title. It's like, oh, the letter X, that means it must be dangerous or not suitable. So they instantly, it was a very broken system. I recall Marquez getting demonetized all the time too. But essentially, if the video got more than 1,000 views in 24 hours or something, you could request a manual review. And pretty much every time I requested a manual review, I got approved. It was just frustrating because it would take them like a week to manually approve it. But that's typically when the majority of the video gets its views. That's when the video accumulates most of its attention, is right in that first week. So by the time they approve it for monetization, the damage has already been done. And I haven't had to deal with this issue for several years now. YouTube's been pretty fine with all my content between tech and EV. I mean, I consider someone like me who's not even cursing and is trying to make family-friendly content just about technology, about subjects that either interest me or complain about brands that make stupid decisions. I don't know why I would be anywhere near YouTube's hit list or blacklist or whatever you want to call it of channels they want to penalize, which is why I find this very, very frustrating given how much money YouTube makes off of me every single year as well. Just about as much as I make, they make in return. So it's disgusting. Okay. You think this isn't controversial? Takes downstream. Yeah, Twitch is going to take me down next, right? Stefan says, I'd love to know what their robots think. Just like, oh my God, that's a copyrighted logo. Demonetized. Yeah, that's not how it works. iPhone in the title. Yeah, that would be really sketch if they were willing to demonetize anything that had iPhone in the title. That would be pretty messed up. I think back in 2019, I got a video automatically demonetized because of the word swallow, which I guess YouTube has deemed unacceptable or too controversial. Mainly because it was kind of a slow news day, so I was just going to report on whatever. And someone, that was this video when someone reported on, what was it? Oh, someone swallowed an AirPod. That's what it was. Someone was like sleeping with AirPods on, and somehow they like rolled around in their bed at the right time, and they swallowed an AirPod. So I made a video about that, and because I had swallow in the title, it instantly got demonetized, which I thought was a little backwards. I mean, I understand how swallow could be used in a unfamily friendly way, but just knowing how commonly we use the term swallow, and how you can use that term in lots of unfriendly. You can use that term in a completely innocent way. Like, I don't know, if you did a vlog that was like, I'm trying to swallow this pill, but it's too big, or something, something crazy like that. Stefan says he sleeps with AirPods in a lot. Yeah, be careful. I still don't understand how a guy swallowed an AirPod. That's crazy. But it was just funny to me that the word in the title was enough. Like, they can't have a manual reviewer just be like, oh, that's fine. He did a video about swallowing an AirPod. We don't need to penalize that. So YouTube kind of has a dirty mind if you think about it. YouTube got to get their mind out of the gutter because they take things wrong. Yeah, if you put the word insert in the title, I'd make a video called like inserting my SIM card into my smartphone, and they're like, no, you can't use the word insert. That's not family friendly. That doesn't work. Moist is a normal word. Yeah, what if they ban the word moist as well? Did you say moist? You can't do that. That can be taken the wrong way. I sleep with AirPods Pro in. Maybe the Pros can't be swallowed. I would think the Pros would be easier to swallow because they're smaller, aren't they? Like, the stem on the original AirPods is much bigger. Can't say bigger. That can be misconstrued. I mean, look at that though. Bud-wise, they're pretty much the same, but the stem, which one would you rather swallow? These are the type of subjects we dive into on the Twitch streams. I would say if I was at gunpoint and I had to swallow one of these, the AirPod Pro would probably go down a little easier. I've had pills about that big. Some of the fish oil pills I take are pretty huge. I don't know. I've always prided myself on the ability to, take extremely large pills. I don't know why, but I can do it. The AirPods Pro are much shorter, yeah. Anyone does anything. YouTube, no, demonetize. Yeah, I don't really get it either, but what about someone who does a video about that bird, a swallow? Yeah, no, that can be taken the wrong way, therefore. See, for those curious, this is why we still have a presence on Twitch, is because in the event of YouTube demonetizing or suddenly issuing a bunch of random community strikes and they take down my channel and prevent me from ever coming back to YouTube, Twitch would basically be my life raft. I would more than likely become kind of a full-time Twitch streamer, and I would likely just stream more often or upload videos directly to Twitch, which you can do, and then I would tweet those videos out so people could watch them, and you'd still get picture-in-picture and that kind of thing. I would still get some ad revenue. I don't believe the CPMs would be as good as YouTube, but I could live off of it if I needed to. Twitch chat NSFW filter censors the word pros. Really? I know they censor a few different words, but I didn't know it was pro. My goodness. YouTube always holds double standards, though. Celebrities can post music videos with horrific and extremely sexual lyrics, and the music videos just downright unwatchable, but they don't get demonetized. I don't know how to tell, though. Do they not? Like, I'm really like, how do you know if a YouTube video is demonetized or not? Because limited ads, I think, will still get you certain advertisements. Sorry, I know there were some frame drops there. It should be back now. There's a fine line between free speech and approved speech. Lately, YouTube has been crossing that line too much. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. The craziest thing is that this latest Intel video seems to be a manual review, which I've yet to see before. Pretty much like I've had videos get demonetized on the tech channel before, but it's always an accident. And whenever I show it to YouTube, they're like, oh, this was automatically flagged. Once a manual review goes through, they go, oh, this is perfectly fine. But this is the first time I've got a video demonetized that actually says, like, manual review. Like, a human looked at this and decided it wasn't acceptable. So I would love to meet that person now. Just be like, so, what was it? What tipped you over the edge? Were you like, the jokes about salt mines, those were fine. But as soon as you said, let's watch Intel burn to the ground, I guess maybe burn to the ground is an expression. That's just too far. We've decided that's bullying or something. In which case, Unbox Therapy should probably get a few videos demonetized, or I Hate Apple Now videos should probably get demonetized. I don't know. Oh, yeah. There's very much double standards on YouTube, though. That's for sure. Let's see. Yeah, I know there's other platforms like Floatplane and Nebula, but it takes a long, long time to build out a community on a different platform. And it has taken me years to build up my YouTube community into a bit of a Twitch community. And it's difficult, even if the platform is much better. Like, I still think there's a bunch of stuff Twitch does much better than YouTube, but people will still refuse to switch platforms because they're just uncomfortable, or they don't want to download another app, or they don't understand it. People don't switch platforms very easily. So I'm sure it would take me a while, and I could dedicate a lot of time and maybe get monetized over on Floatplane and Nebula. I don't know very much about them, but I don't think it would be as effective as just keep growing on Twitch, keep focusing on Twitch, where I'm already monetized. I'm already a partner. There's already a present fan base on. So every time a content creator switches platforms, they lose a bunch of people. It's just inevitable. I think the thing about Android not aging well is wrong. My Note 8 is 3 years old. I'm considering not even upgrading this year because my phone is fine. I have it restart in the middle of the night every other weekday. My phone still acts fine, little to no lag. Well, I don't think when people are saying Androids don't age well, they're referring to 3 years. I think they're referring to 4 or 5 years, which is, certain iPhones get 6 years of software updates. So the idea that you buy a phone and like 5 to 6 years later, it's still gaining features, I think is what more people are referring to. Whereas on Android, you kind of get tapped out after 3 years, and then they're not really bringing much features, or if they are bringing updates, they're just security updates. They're not feature updates. And you could still probably run certain apps on the Play Store, but for the most part. Floatplane is a subscription-only service. I wouldn't sign up for it. Yeah, subscriptions are not my thing, so that would definitely turn me away. YouTube must like Intel paying them to demonetize you. Probably not, but maybe. I think they could get in massive, massive trouble for that. I won't say it's impossible, but I don't think that's it. It's not likely. I think what's more likely is someone who is a little bit too trigger happy at YouTube. I don't know where these manual reviewers are, like if they hire them in the US or they hire them in some other country, but maybe some newbie was just looking through videos and was just like, we got to up our demonetization game. So they get one and they're like, oh crap, we got to demonetize a certain amount of videos. But when it comes to advertiser friendly content, I must say, I am by far not, I should not be of your concern, YouTube. I'm not part of the platform you need to worry about. Let's see. YouTube cannot handle it. KSI and Jake Paul are still threatening to box the other person and make them bleed on the ground and tear each other's heads off, but saying a computer processor company should fail gets demonetized. Again, I don't know if those videos remain monetized, but yeah, you need to become a manual reviewer. Well, they've kind of encouraged that recently in the latest YouTube Studio refresh, which was like a year ago now, I think. It's been around for a while. They basically ask you to disclose what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable in every video you upload, which I guess they grade you on. They're like, how accurate are you at measuring your video's monetization status? And they ask you to check every box, which is kind of annoying to me because I've never uploaded anything related to drug use, related to the news or controversial topics. It's always just like tech thoughts and ideas that I spitball. And every video I'm just like, no, it does not include children. It does not include abuse. It does not include violence. There's no graphic content or anything like that. There's a little bit of lag. It's fine now. But yeah, I don't know why they make me go through that. Every single video I upload, I have to check all those boxes every single time. They don't let it be a default standard thing. You can't just be like, all my videos are fine. Just don't expect any graphic content or controversial content from me ever. And they don't let you do that. You just have to hit the box every time. No, it doesn't include that. No, it doesn't include that. No, it doesn't include that. My video is perfectly fine. Every single time you upload, it gets very, very old. Have you heard of any other YouTubers who got demonetized for reacting to Intel ads? I have not, no. Which makes me wonder what I did. And because I don't know what I did, that's why I would really appreciate a more direct response. When YouTube does stuff like this, it's very confusing because if there's a certain phrase or a certain word that you say that can instantly get you demonetized, I would much rather know what that word is so that I don't make that mistake again. Because if saying like burn to the ground instantly makes it demonetizable, then okay, I'll remember to not say that again. But if they're not going to tell me and they just say this includes abuse and that's all you have to go off of, like even if it was the length of a tweet, even if the human reviewer can just say, hey, when you say things like this, like I want direct quotes or a direct visual. Like, point out specifically what you can't do. If you have some weird guideline like that, you need to know what it is. But if not, then, yeah, it's going to become a recurring problem. You missed out on, like, $10? No, it'd be much more than that. What, are you a professional creator, Zirialo? you think videos with 15,000 views make $10? It's not necessarily about the money. I'm just saying if there's something I'm doing and they don't tell me what I'm doing, then that will continue to get demonetized in the future, which is going to be much more than $10. Have you seen your Pixel rants? The Pixel will have a traumatic life. Yeah, they never demonetized the Pixel rants, which are directly about Google. So if there was any kind of bias or direct issue with them monetizing, then yeah, that would be an issue. Can you change the title? I can, but I don't think that makes a difference if it's reviewed by a human. It says confirmed by review. Confirmed by manual review as not suitable for most advertisers, which is hilarious to me. Let's see. Intel's getting abused by Apple and AMD. It's too much bullying. I guess there's too much bullying involved. No, I'm pretty sure if another YouTuber got demonetized for that, they would probably bring it up. So I've yet to see anything about that, but yeah, it's funny to me. Like I made this tweet yesterday. It's funny to me that both Justin Long and sorry I forget his name, the PC guy, are both still capitalizing on the Mac versus PC ads, despite not being in any Apple at well. He was in the end of, some people forget, see, he was in the end of the M1 event, right after they first unveiled Apple Silicon and everything. He was at the very end, and he was like, hey, PCs are still fast, but obviously the commercial was pretty lackluster because Justin Long wasn't in it, but of course Justin Long is busy getting paid by Intel for their ads. So I just photoshopped the two together because these are both videos taken within the past 6 months, I believe. They're both pretty recent. So they're both profiting off of the Mac versus PC ads, but from different, just from different companies. I guess PC guy is still getting Apple, but they should legit bring them back at this point. I think it would be pretty hilarious. they just revive the commercials. If we're still memeing off of them, Intel, Huawei, they're still just trying to get Justin Long because he's the Mac guy. So if they can bring that back, Justin Long would totally do it. Like, Justin Long is going to work for whoever pays him the most. So Apple just has to cut a check bigger than Intel's, which I don't think will be very hard. Apple probably has a lot of cash on hand. So they've already got PC Guy back. They got him for the M1 event. So if they do, we could have a revival. Just Justin Long shows up in a workout outfit, and he's like, oh, I'm really fast and I never get tired, whereas PC Guy has like a fever. He's like really, really hot. He's like, oh gosh, I can barely keep up with all these Intel processors. Let's see. Didn't Justin Long get extremely close to become all PCs? What do you mean extremely close? I'm trying to understand what you mean by extremely close. Close with Intel? I don't know. He still uses an iPhone despite doing Huawei ads, so YouTube, put monkeys in a room with two buttons. One button says demonetize, one says strike. That would explain a lot, actually. Just a piece, just a monkey like slapping a keyboard, and that's the YouTube copyright system. They're just like, strike this, demonetize this. Matt Apple donated 50 bits. He said, hey, Drew, thank you. Welcome. Apple should fire back and have an ad that roasts Intel PCs. I mean, ultimately they shouldn't, because honestly, I would rather that money just go towards making Apple Silicon better. They don't need advertising. In fact, if anything, I think Intel making anti-Apple ads is a really bad look, as evident by any of the Intel ads comment section or the dislikes. They're really, really cringy, and they seem to be ticking off both PC fans and Apple fans. They don't, like, even people who aren't interested in Apple are annoyed by the commercials because they're like, Intel, you still suck. You're not addressing the main issue. Or I saw a bunch of people commenting like, I'm going to buy a PC with an AMD Ryzen chip, not an Intel chip. So they're not really helping Intel. So I don't see why Apple would need to respond or make some kind of anti-Intel ads, because the M1 chip is an anti-Intel ad in itself. Like, making a product that's honestly much, much better, that's got better battery life, that's got better performance, and got better affordability. That's going to be a bigger punch to the face than Intel, than any marketing campaign, to be fair. I mean, it would probably be pretty interesting. I mean, it would be pretty epic if Apple decided to post some videos where, instead of saying, like they did with the M1 event, where they were like, here's the Apple Silicon chip and here's the latest PC chip. Instead, what if they just start directly calling out Intel processors, and they're like, here's Intel i9 and here's how hot it runs, and here's the M1 and how hot it runs, and they just start giving you the simple facts and just be like, see, this is why M1 is better. It results in much better battery life, much better this and that. That would be kind of interesting, but I think unnecessary, because most people who care about that type of tech spec probably already know, and people who don't care about that type of tech spec aren't going to be swayed or convinced by a commercial. If there's people who don't really care about performance or how hot the chips run, they're not going to see a commercial about how hot the chips run and go, oh, okay, I'm on Apple's side now. Like, honestly, I don't think Intel's ads are going to convince anybody. Like, Apple Silicon just makes Apple better. It doesn't really change whether or not people want to buy a PC or a Mac, in my opinion. It makes the Apple fan base very happy they're in the Apple fan base. But people that were still PC fans, I don't really see them eager to switch. I don't see a bunch of Windows people that are like, oh man, I didn't really care about Apple products, but once this M1 chip came out, now I'm really interested. It's like, if you weren't on a Mac in the first place, there's not a bunch of reasons to now be on the Mac other than just like, it's faster than it was before, I guess. But I don't know. I feel like people mainly come down to software differences as to why they will or won't buy something. It all comes down to what platform has the software I need to utilize. I think I've met more people that just use Windows because it has software they need, rather than people who just like Windows in general. I mean, I haven't met a ton of people that are just like, oh yeah, I love the way Windows 10 handles software, and I love how they handle the interaction of different third-party applications. It's always just like, well, it has a program I need. I need this program for school. I need this program for work. I need this because this type of application is not on the Mac, and that's why they use Windows. That's what it typically is. Your iPhone 12 minis made me reconsider my choice with the 12 Pro Max, especially because this is the shortest phone I'll have because it was released so late. Yeah, that was part of the reason I wanted to go with the 12 mini is I realized, like, this is, yeah, I'm planning on upgrading this year. Unless they don't have 120 hertz. I'll stand by my point there. But I was like, I'm probably only going to have this iPhone for 10 months. And if I'm only going to have a phone for 10 months, I'm okay trying something different, trying something unique. And honestly, I've really fallen in love with it. Like, it has become such a default standard size to me that I don't even see this as small anymore. Like, when I first got it, it felt really compact and really tiny. But now it feels like completely normal. I don't even think about it. I just hold the phone a bit closer to my face likely, and I do the swipe keyboard more often, and I can reach everything on the screen. So much so that I'm actually concerned now that if I switch to a Pro Max, I'm not going to like it anymore. And if I get the Pro Max this year, I'm going to be like, oh man, this is too overbearing, and I won't get comfortable with it. But most likely, I think I will get comfortable with it. It's just, I can kind of get used to any size if I have it for long enough. So it might be a little bit of a adjustment period with a Pro Max, but I'll probably get there eventually. Let's see. MTKV Nella, I don't know how to say your name, but he says it's quite opposite. People buy M1 for budget now because many people who draw do video and graphics. It's just cheaper. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think M1 is cannibalizing other Mac sales more than anything. I don't think M1 Macs are stealing people away from PCs very much. They're probably just stopping people from buying other Intel-based Macs, if anything. Stefan says, I love the way Windows 10 crashes with a frowning face on the screen. Bro, like, my wife had to get a Windows 10 PC for her work. Like, they gave her one. I tried. Trust me. I still have a Mac Mini here. I offered it to her several times. I was like, can they put because she needs a VPN to work. And I was like, honey, can they just bring this Mac to your business and tell them to put the VPN on it, and you can just work off of the Mac Mini? It'll be so much better. Because she was on a Chromebook for the first year, and the Chromebook sucked. It kept freezing on her. It kept dropping Wi-Fi when the Wi-Fi wasn't dropped. This was pre-Starlink. I know that Starlink is a little bumpy now, but I was talking back when we had Comcast. Her Chromebook, while I was live streaming and uploading, losing 0 frames. She kept dropping signal. That thing was terrible. And they gave her this cheap Windows laptop. It loves to make all these different noises. And on some mornings, she'll turn it on and it'll boot up right away. And on other mornings, it'll turn on and want to update something. And then it won't connect to the internet. And then in the middle of doing something, like none of the tabs were working. I think it's one of those like 8 gig of RAM laptops with which Windows is not a great idea. And she obviously for her work has to have a lot of tabs open, and she uses Chrome for everything. I don't know if she can use Microsoft Edge. The business she's working at has very specific requirements for the software she uses. They have to run certain programs and certain things. So it's not like, well, just buy one of these and use that instead. It's not that simple. I've tried. They considered it a security risk to put the software she needs on a separate computer that we provided. So no, Windows 10 legit. It loves to make noises. Compared to a Mac, I've set up a million Macs in my life, and I've set up quite a few PCs in my life, and Windows 10 loves doing the whole it's just crazy amount of pop-ups when she set that thing up, and every notification has this really loud noise. They had to go into settings and turn them all off, but I was just like, my goodness. I'm convinced that it just does. That sucks as an OS. I got a $2,000 Dell XPS. I'm sure there's more expensive PCs that are much better. It's the best Windows computer I've ever used, but it's still slower than Mac. Probably depends, you know. There's certain PCs, I'm sure, that are very fast, and there's certain Macs that are very fast, and certain Macs that are pretty slow. Would you say 16 gigs of RAM is an absolute must in a new MacBook? No. I mean, it depends on what you're doing, but RAM is not created equal in all machines. I would say 16 gigs of RAM in a PC, yes. I would say that's a must. If you're getting a new PC, in today's day and age. Just from my experience with the Windows laptop my wife has been using, that thing has 8 gigs of RAM and it can barely run all the Chrome tabs she has open, and apps love to crash on Windows, and Task Manager freaks out sometimes too. So, it's kind of like the difference. It's not exactly the same, I know, but it's kind of like the difference between RAM on iOS versus Android. Like 16 gigs of RAM on Android is not going to result in that much of a difference between an iPhone with 4 gigs of RAM, just because of how the software is handled and how multitasking is handled on Android versus iOS. And it's sort of a similar thing with the Mac with Apple Silicon. They have this like unified memory, which is able to be a lot more efficient with how it runs apps in the background. And I've never had any multitasking problems with my iPad Pro. Like this is a classic example, in my opinion, of how like not all RAM is created equal in all of our devices, because I've never had apps crash on this thing. If they have, I can't remember the last time an app crashed. And I've done, picture-in-picture, split-screen multitasking. I'd be doing stuff in Discord, Twitter, email, or that'd be editing a video, and everything would be running great. And this thing only has 4 gigs, and it handles app management great. And I can open up apps in the background and switch between all this different stuff and edit videos on it and edit thumbnails on it, and they don't crash. Affinity Photo is a very high demanding program, as is Over, and I can use both of them very, very fluently. And that's with Apple Silicon, right? That's with the unified memory versus the whatever it's called in PCs these days, DDR4, DDR5. So with a Mac, I did OBS live streaming. I did 4K at 60 video editing with the MacBook Air. No fan in that thing, but it did have the M1 chip. It only had 8 gigs of RAM, and it was a breeze. I could keep tons of applications open. I was powering an external monitor. I was doing everything I needed to with that thing, and the RAM was never an issue. And it only had 8 gigs because it's more of like the iOS level of RAM versus a PC level of RAM, which doesn't get utilized as well. So that's why if you're buying a new Mac, I would not say 16 gigs is required. I mean, obviously it'll do better. I mean, if you want better multitasking, I'm not saying it's a dumb investment, but to say it's a must, no, not at all. The Wandering Knight donated 100 bits. Thank you. Says, sorry I missed most of the stream. What did I miss in quick summary? Basically, YouTube demonetized my video about Intel's ads, saying that it was manually reviewed by a human who decided that the content focused too much on graphic or detailed descriptions of controversial issues such as suicide, sexual abuse, child abuse, and domestic abuse. So a human labeled my video that way, a video complaining about Intel commercials. And it's still demonetized at this time. I reached out to YouTube and said that there's something wrong, and at this point it is still demonetized. So I don't know what I did wrong or what I said to set them off, but I was pretty ticked off because I feel like as a channel I work pretty hard to make sure my content is family friendly and acceptable, I'm sure, to pretty much any advertiser other than the company that the subject matter is about. Obviously, it's probably not very friendly to Intel, but yeah, I was pretty annoyed by it. Cooper Bomb subscribed with Twitch Prime for 18 months. Wow, thank you. That was very nice of you. Are you worried about the memory swap issues with the M1 Max? I don't exactly know what memory swap issues you're referring to, but no, in general. Just because I am in contact with several people that are still using M1 Max, and they seem to be very happy with them. So I imagine if there is an issue, it's not that major, and it is a first-generation product, so I'm sure there's some issues they may run into on the first generation, but nothing cataclysmic, I'm guessing. Matt Apple donated 20 bits and said, Leaks Apple Pro shut down his bootleg Alibaba store. Well, that's good. Probably shouldn't be selling bootleg stuff like that. Yusuf the Ace says, businesses still need Windows 10 because if everyone just switched to macOS, 75% of technicians and people who work in tech support would lose their jobs because there wouldn't be as many problems. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I don't know about 75%, but there is... That's funny. they'd lose their jobs because there aren't any problems. No, I know it's more complicated than that. There are certain things that Windows does that makes it more approachable and affordable to everyday businesses compared to Macs, which aren't as customizable and that aren't as easy to take apart and work on yourself, which certain businesses need, certain servers need. So, like, I understand that not everybody can switch to Mac for whatever reason, but I do think that there is something to be said that there is a very wide, very present infrastructure of technicians and employees that have been trained and experienced in learning how things work on Microsoft software and not Mac software, and because of that, they can't change their platform, they can't change their hardware, even if they wanted to, simply because they've all been trained a certain way. Like I know that very presently because of my parents are both teachers that have worked in the school system for around 30 years, not quite 30, but like 27 or 28 years. And they've told me many stories very similarly about how, you know, different teachers and different programs have to teach students or have to teach employees to use a certain program over another simply because that was the program they were trained in. So if you train a bunch of employees and a bunch of teachers how to use Microsoft Word, even if Microsoft Word costs money because Microsoft charges for their Office suite, whereas Apple work apps like Pages or Google apps like Google Docs and Google Sheets, those can be completely free and work 90% of the same way, might have a few little differences here and there, but nothing that you couldn't figure out. They won't let students or they won't let employees or everything switch over simply because that was what they were trained in. They were like, oh no, I wouldn't know how to teach people how to use that. And I can't learn how to use a new program. So we're just going to keep paying for Microsoft Office, even though there's a free alternative. That was a very common issue in school districts and in community college as well. I talked to a lot of professors, I think is the term, that basically had similar stories like that. Regular maintenance on Windows takes a lot longer than Linux, FreeBSD / macOS. Probably. I'm sure there's fluff that doesn't need to be there. I've seen it firsthand on how many Windows machines need to be set up and how many updates they got to go through. But they're cheap. You can't deny them that. Like, there's a lot of like school libraries or employee rounds of computers where they all got to buy everybody a computer, and they're not going to be able to buy everybody $1,000 MacBook. That would be great, but they can't all do that. So they buy them all $300 PCs or $200 Chromebooks and things that aren't very good, but they're cheap and they can buy a lot of them. You could buy one, have it break, and replace it for cheaper than buying one Mac. Punny Air says, I bought a Windows laptop once. It came with McAfee antivirus, Candy Crush ads, and a bunch of other nonsense bloatware. Never again. That's what I feel like most of the PC market is. I know that's not all of it. There are definitely very high-end, more luxury, premium Windows laptops out there with high-end hardware and good build quality that probably run very well. But I feel like most of the PC market isn't that. I feel like the majority of it is like the cheap, like you said, you know, the ones that come with McAfee antivirus and Candy Crush ads. I feel like that's what the majority of people buying Windows laptops are getting. Matt Apple donated 10 bits and said Microsoft Word is not free on Windows. No, it isn't. That's the hilarious thing. It doesn't matter if you bought Windows 10 or not. It's just it costs money to use their Office apps, which I can't think of any other company that does that. Like Apple includes all of their Office apps for free, whether it's Numbers or Keynote or Pages, and they might have a few missing features compared to Microsoft's, but it's very small. Like from what I've seen, the difference is so small. It's like literal spacing options. They're like, oh, Microsoft Word has this weird like fine print spacing option that I can't do on Apple Pages. It's not like a deal breaker. It's just people being specific and requiring random things that they don't need to require. Be like, this college requires 2.76 spacing options in text. It's like, you can't read the essay if it's 2.5. It's always ridiculous crap like that. And Google, I'm not even saying you all have to switch to Apple apps because those have their own set of disadvantages and advantages. But I just mean like the simplicity of Google Suite. Like Google Drive comes with 15 gigs of free storage, which is great. and it's completely free. There's no ads. You got Google Docs, you got Google Sheets, you got Google Slides, you got Google Photos for the longest time has been offering all this in unlimited backup and that kind of thing. Like, there's so much available for free, yet there's so much infrastructure built for Microsoft that they simply won't switch over because that would require them to do something they don't know how to do. That would take them time to learn something. Ooh, oh no, what do we do? It's such a mess. Why are Chromebooks a thing? Well, they're good for certain basic tasks because a lot of what people do with laptops these days are all internet based. Like something like what my wife does not require any local high-end processing. She's not video editing. She's not audio engineering. She's not writing software. She's just like communicating with customers over a web browser. So for certain tasks and certain purposes, a Chromebook can be good. There's some people that basically just get laptops to watch YouTube videos and do homework with. So there are good Chromebooks and there are bad ones. Because the software is so cheap and because the laptop can get away with such low-end hardware, you typically end up with a huge catalog of Chromebooks that were built in a hurry, that were built without much thought, and that results in them not aging very well and them falling apart very quickly. I've owned several Chromebooks in my life and had them die within a year. Literally just they won't charge anymore, or they stop connecting to the internet, or they break very easily. So that's what happens when you try to make what I used to call Happy Meal laptops. It's basically the kind of computer you could throw in a Happy Meal because it's so cheap to make. Whereas there are some more expensive Chromebooks that are going to age much better, that are built with more premium materials. But the thing is, when you start spending more money on a higher end Chromebook, you're approaching the price point of an actual real laptop that actually has a decent processor or actually has decent components that can do more than just a browser, which is why a high-end Chromebook, in my opinion, is pretty stupid. But a low-end one that's like easy to replace and cost $200, I can kind of get. I don't think they're pointless. I just think that after a certain price point, they're kind of useless. Pontier says you literally can't open a Word, PowerPoint, or Excel file on a Windows laptop without installing separate paid software. It's embarrassing when you consider Apple basically gives you a whole creative office suite for free. I think Microsoft just makes so much money off of it, they can't afford to give it away for free, so they're not going to. Matthew Pulaski says, my community college has a required class for all freshmen, and it's a literally how to use Windows in Microsoft Office. The entire class is online, and it takes place in a Windows simulator online. It's one of the worst classes ever. The simulator is super slow, and for people like me who are on Mac, most of the keys and buttons you need to press don't actually exist. Oh, that's so depressing. It's giving me a headache just thinking about doing that. Nicholas says, my dad still uses Microsoft Office Suite from 2001 because he doesn't want to upgrade. I don't blame him. If it works and you don't have to pay for it because you already paid for it way before, then yeah, why would you upgrade? I have a family friend that uses an old PC that's on Windows 7 because he's an architect and he works on these building plans with this software. I think it's called AutoCAD or something like that. And the new version of AutoCAD is a subscription-based membership, kind of like Adobe Creative Cloud, where you have to pay monthly. And he obviously doesn't want to pay monthly because he has this older version of AutoCAD that he got to buy once and he still has ownership of. But he's worried about, because I told him before, I told him how certain Windows machines will update to Windows 10 without consent, or they'll keep warning you, time to update, you got to get on this new version that's going to cost more, it's going to screw up all your files. So he has an iMac. He has a 5K iMac that he's had since 2015, and that's what he uses for internet. So he keeps all of his email, and he listens to music, and he watches videos on that, and he sends his AutoCAD files to work from his Mac. But right next to his iMac, he has his Windows 7 PC, but there's no internet. It doesn't even have a Wi-Fi card, and he doesn't give it Ethernet or anything. So his PC is completely offline, and whenever he needs to share his finalized files to his other employees or to his boss, he just takes it from a flash drive off the PC into the Mac and then sends it off from there. That way he doesn't get bombarded with the Windows 10 ads, and his computer doesn't try to do some kind of automatic updates in the background, which personally I think Windows 7 was the best version of Windows. Like Windows 10 was trying to be so many different things that it ended up being this like cluttered mess of a tablet touchscreen desktop hybrid, and all the updates annoy the crap out of me. But I owned a PC for a long time that just ran Windows 7, and it ran great. I had no bad things to say about Windows 7. Like the design was fine, the apps worked, and there wasn't a bunch of crazy random updates, and it didn't look like it was trying to be a tablet or anything. I was fairly happy with Windows 7, so I totally understand why someone who works with PCs like that, because he has to use that CAD software and he doesn't have it available for the Mac, he's just going to keep his PC detached offline as long as possible. And I think that's a great system. He's been doing that for probably the last 5 years or so. Ever since he got his iMac, he just leaves his PC disconnected. That's the way to go. It's basically his CAD machine. Doesn't do anything else than run CAD. Would you update your Mac if Final Cut Pro converted to a subscription model? Ooh, man. I would be very tempted not to, but I feel like there would not be a way around it. I don't see a world where they just like lock you out of Final Cut completely, and if you don't subscribe to it, you can't even open it anymore. For one, they would get an intense amount of backlash like that, and there might even be some legal issues with that because it's not free software. It's software that we paid for. Like I bought and own Final Cut fair and square, and I've gotten updates with it, and I think there's certain legal terms of conditions we agreed to when we purchase software like that. I don't know if Apple could get away with that, where there's just an update that shows up and you can't open Final Cut unless you subscribe to it. They might do something where there's some extra features, like if they did like Final Cut Plus, Final Cut that comes with editing tutorials and gives you more text plugins and more effects to play with. If they give you like all these advantages to Final Cut Plus, I would simply not subscribe to it, but I would probably be annoyed because every time I open Final Cut, it would probably give me a pop-up that says, please subscribe to Final Cut Plus. And I would just be like, no. I'd be very annoyed, but I don't see a world happening where it's just like, okay, as soon as you get this version of Mac OS, Final Cut doesn't open until you start subscribing. That would shock me. That would make me legitimately mad. But I guess if it did, they could legally get away with it, and they did all of that, then yeah, I would probably consider it. I would probably want to have a copy of Final Cut on an offline Mac that I just use for editing, and then I would get another Mac just for all my online stuff. But yeah, that would annoy the crap out of me. I'd probably be really tempted. You guys know how much I hate subscriptions. I don't like memberships. I don't like paying monthly for things. I would much rather own everything outright. I don't like this trend of the pluses and everything. I really don't want that to happen, but if there was no way to get more updates and it was becoming more inconvenient to have a separate Mac just for Final Cut and a separate Mac just for everything else, I don't know, a certain price I would probably have to pay. I guess I would be, I could justify it. I mean, I use it for my job, but I would probably actually be more curious of alternatives at that point. I'd be very, very interested in switching to DaVinci Resolve, or that's the only one that comes to mind right now. I think Avid doesn't do memberships. They might be a one-time purchase, but obviously it would take a while because I don't know how to use those programs, but I'm sure I could adapt, and I would basically look towards alternatives if that's the direction Final Cut was heading. But I would be very, very mad. I don't think that will happen personally. Like if you're predicting what I think will happen is that if Apple wants to launch Final Cut on the iPad, they'll probably do it as a membership because people are not going to pay $300 for an iPad app. That's just not going to be common. If they wanted to keep the price on the Mac as it is on the iPad, it wouldn't go well. But making it an alternative option, I could see them doing, because not everybody can afford to drop $200 or $300 on a program, but some people might be able to justify $5 a month, which in the long term might actually make Apple more, but making it an optional thing. Like if you want to subscribe to it, you can, and if you want to buy it outright, you can. Just keep both. I don't think many people would be annoyed by that. I think most people would be like, okay, this is just a more affordable option to getting Final Cut now. That wouldn't bother them. But yeah, obviously what we're all worried about is Apple going the Adobe route and just deciding that, okay, for all future updates, you're going to have to join our Apple Cloud subscription or whatever. Let's see. The only thing keeping so many creatives on Macs is the single payment software. If that became a subscription, that would be a bad decision. I don't know if I would say it's the only thing. I think that it has a lot more to do with Apple's not just single payment software, but the software itself. On Windows, there's some audio and video editing software, but it's not as optimized. And now with Apple Silicon, that's another big reason to stay on Mac. And it's just software people are comfortable with. It's in general just the platform most people go to for, of course, writing iOS software and video editing and photo editing, and it's just more common on the Mac. But I agree that the single payment is a big part of it, but it's not the only thing. It would be a bad decision for them to go the subscription route, in my opinion, but financially they probably have some chart somewhere that says they'll profit more and people will get used to it or something like that. Matt says, Apple is not going to cut out previous Final Cut users. They used to upgrade it every 2 to 3 years, and the old version still worked fine. It's just that if you wanted to stay up to date, you had to pay $1,000 every 3 years for the new version. If anything, that's what they'll do. If they want to change it to a subscription service, they'll introduce Final Cut Pro 11 or something like that, where they have to sell the old version. I don't know. I don't see them doing that anymore. They used to sell like macOS and iOS updates. You guys remember those days? It's like, if you want the new Mac OS, you got to spend $20. And then they were like, oh, that's not a good idea. I'd say like $50 for Final Cut on iPad is fair. That's about $20 more than LumaFusion. Anything more than that will be overpriced. I don't think you can say overpriced if there's nothing else like it. That's my definition of overpriced, meaning you can get something that does the same thing for cheaper. So if Final Cut has all these advantages over LumaFusion that no other app on the App Store can do, you can't really say it's overpriced, even if it's super expensive. It'll just be like, okay, it's expensive. It's out of my price range, but it costs what it costs. It's not overpriced. So that's why I just because it's an iPad and it's on the App Store, apps that are over $20 rarely get any sales. And even if it was from Apple, they could probably sell it pretty well at $50 or $100. But just the same price as the Mac? No, I doubt anybody would be willing to drop $300 on, because that would be on like an iPad. You're dropping like a few $100 on an iPad and then $300 on the software. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how they handle it. But Danny Hanna says, I read the title. That really sucks. That's why I really dislike the way they do demonetization. I agree. It's very messed up. And I'm hoping someone from YouTube can get in contact with me about it, because people are saying like, oh, I hate when robots do that. But it's like, it says that a human did this, unless YouTube is lying. They legit said a video complaining about a commercial is too controversial because it's detailed description of controversial issues. They won't sell the old version, but you'll still be able to download it from your old purchases. It'll just be stuck on an old update forever. That wouldn't bother me as much. Like Final Cut in its current state, I don't really need to be updated. I mean, they might come out with some 360-degree or HDR video support, but I don't care. I don't plan on using any of those. So if I can just keep Final Cut in its current state, I won't be that annoyed. If there's a $10 a month subscription to keep getting updates, then I'll be like, oh, okay, guess I'm not getting updates. Until eventually the old Final Cut won't work on the Apple Silicon anymore. They'll be like, oh, no, that we don't support that software anymore. That would suck. All right, we're about to wrap up the stream, so I'll say it again. YouTube claims that my video complaining about Intel was too controversial, and it had topics that may be unsettling for our users, and they said that the content focuses too much on things like suicide, sexual abuse, child abuse, or domestic abuse. Obviously, that's not true and messed up, but they claim a human reviewer found that, so I'm annoyed with YouTube. So Twitch for the win. Once YouTube bans me from their platform, I'll be over here. But I appreciate you guys tuning in, appreciate the bits and the Twitch primes, and I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day. Tech video going up now. See you there. Bye bye.